Hello again, everyone. It's James, and we're going to dive into another SoulSync community member, actually one of the fellas that has started it. Joey, it's great to meet you. And I guess the way that we should start this off is why? Why SoulSync? What's Soulbis that I see you representing? And I guess a bit about you as well.
Yeah, for sure. And also just thank you for being the first community member to actually do a community project. Communities only live by the people and the blood that flows. So being able to do this and being a part of this is a pretty big deal. So thank you.
Love it. It's going to get
So
involved.
yeah, absolutely. Let's do it. In terms of um, why SoulSync? SoulSync was meant to just bring together all the different voices on Soulbound tokens. Going to Soulbis very briefly, we started the world's first blockchain research and advisory that has a specialization on tokens. We've done other pieces such as CBDCs, protocol level staking, research investigation, key management. But Soulbound tokens is that really niche part where we've just dedicated a lot of time to our research. And for SoulSync, it was just bringing in the researchers we're already speaking to, the professionals in the corporate world, such as AWS, into this conversation too, even grassroots community members, because without the connection or the trusted party in between, they may never discuss, talk, or innovate. And therefore, it could lead to this massive level we call or is unintentional information asymmetry. So by connecting everyone, we make these like hyper trust networks, and then obviously provide that kind of reputation. And in a way, use case exactly what a Soulbound token based ecosystem looks like, where trust reputation is used without capital incentive.
Where trust reputation is used without capital incentive. What does that mean? What do you mean by that?
So where simply you can bring down most value into two main categories. Capital value, this is like your property, this is things that actually have quantifiable means of valuing. Like you can actually value it with a dollar, you can value it with Bitcoin, value it with Ethereum, Ether. But with reputation, it's a bit more ethereal. How do you value someone's degree? Is it the money they spent on it? Or then what if it's from a different country where the cost is different? What if it's free for them in that country in itself? Or what if you go to another country? How do you value that, right? It's very hard. It's very abstract, right? So where reputation is, what we do know exists. We know it exists because we're here right now. I didn't have to pay you to be here, nor did you have to pay me, nor did I pay anyone at all to be part of this community. But they all relied on that trust network to actually exist together. Whereas if we were anonymous, we may need to pay, such as a DAO at first.
Yeah.
That seems a bit convoluted, but the reality is pay with money or pay with your reputation. Either way, if something goes wrong, you're accountable to it nonetheless.
I like it. And I guess you're even accountable if you're anonymous, but you've built up a reputation and you do the wrong thing, right? And then you lose that reputation.
Yeah, so we published a paper with a group of academics, professors, and key corporates around the world called the Blockchain Governance Initiative Network. And the paper we published was around 104 pages long. And there's a whole entire section wrote their reputation variables. So we call it the 5 variables of reputation economics to discuss exactly that point. You know, what is the point that people are willing to, we call, throw away their reputation because it's more profitable to cheat the system. But then they'll only do that if the replacement cost of that reputation is very low, much lower than they can gain from it. Meaning that people who are in a situation where they've gained years and years, let's say 10 years reputation, like that's a very expensive reputation right there, very, very costly. To throw that away would mean to lose 10 years, which is quantifiable to an extent.
Yep, it certainly is. I know it is for me. That's really interesting. Actually, I'm keen. I've got it as a bookmark. I've got to apologize. I haven't made my way into it yet. This paper looks really, really good, and I'm really excited. I've had a look at the contents.
Thank you.
Can you give us a summary of 100 odd pages? What's the objective, and what are some of the key things that you thought were interesting?
Definitely. So there is only, at the time that we started the paper, there was only the original DSOC paper, the Decentralized Society, Finding Web3 Soul paper by Vitalik Buterin, Pusha Olhaver, and E. Glenn Whale. there's the massive void of academic or research material in a brand new piece of technology can be detrimental. So I came a little bit later on. I think we started about 2 months in to the paper until I joined, and I joined as my co-author Michi Kakabayashi from UC Berkeley, and we started to write this paper and expand it on. At first, it was primarily about stakeholder interactions, and from the government and corporate perspective, and abstracted a lot from technical functionalities, design choices, even frameworks from 90s computer scientists like Nick Szabo, and how they kind of looked at smart contract design. Now coming on board back then, I actually started to put time into it. And then we expanded into including EIP lists, which we have, I think, 15 relevant EIPs, including some token centric and auxiliary, such as the revocable registry list. The EIP for that, it particularly does pass me, but nonetheless is very important when you have a new smart contract primitive that with one of the core features being revocability.
When you say you now have about 15 of these EIPs, are they like the team has designed them and they're sitting as proposals, or you've identified them?
Great question. Sorry, probably to clarify that. We've identified them.
Right.
One of them are one of the authors of the 5 EIP 5727 is one of our clients. That's the semi-fungible Soulbound token standard. But again, I've been reviewing this piece for quite a long time, and that's still in draft right now. Whereas the first EIP that was released, which Soulbound token related, was 5192. And that was the minimal Soulbound token NFT by Tim Dobb, who's also in SoulSync. And we've had a few chats with him in the past.
It's exciting. And I guess like if you zoom back out a little bit, it seems like with different actually we'll zoom back in, pause that thought, we'll go back in for a second. I just realized there is one thing I want to talk about. The one of the previous chats I just had was someone doesn't like the idea of these things being called Soulbound tokens, but they are okay with SPTs. And I think the gist of it was basically that there's a lot of different use cases or like variants, and those will turn out to matter. Whereas like if you look at a normal ETH token, you can kind of assume it's the ERC20 and it's going to behave in a certain way. But when it comes to Soulbounds, the different variants that go into it might have like dramatic effects. Like right now, if you get an NFT, you kind of don't need to worry too much about how it's going to function. Whereas, yeah, it seems like there's going to be a lot of different types of Soulbounds. So I was keen to see where your head's on that, because I'm sure it's come up.
Oh yeah, I've read about this too. So we identified, I think it was 5 different types or subcategories of Soulbound tokens. And I'll just kind of explain those first, and then I'll go back to exactly why I would still define the entire category of these as Soulbound. So the first type is Soulbound token. This is a decentralized use case of a non-transferable asset, both non-fungible and fungible. This doesn't indicate any clear EIPs, but it's just a very good overarching kind of definition of it. The next is account bound. This is a centralized use case. A great example of this would be Binance account bound token, the BAB, that is centralized within that environment. You can't take it outside of BNB chain. If any other chains try to take on board, you could potentially leverage liability, but it's already leveraging the liability of Binance's result KYC of that individual or the entity itself. The next would be NIM bound, which is when it's a localized, potentially centralized or or decentralized use case, and maybe used within a kind of permissioned environment, right? So maybe like a company creates not account bound, but a NIM bound that might be associated to a handle. And the next type would be your name bound, associated to your name directly, potentially to your government ID, or if ever becomes a better federated identity solution, maybe associated to that. But as you can see, these are different ways to segment it. The clear kind of definitions surround across, well, who's actually the custodian of this? Self-sovereignty is a different one. Like, do you have a self-sovereign Soulbound? Like, it's kind of in the name already, so you wouldn't use that. And self-sovereignty already has a lot of connotations to what that actually means, and different camps and different movements believe it different. Well, I wouldn't say different, but it's just not very clearly segmented, I'd say.
Yep, that's fair.
So the use of the word soul, I haven't seen any, and it's one thing that comes up all the time from even being heckled on stage in the past about, the use of the word soul. I've been heckled a few times about this. I haven't seen any data to prove that people are actually en masse not going to use a product because of the word soul. Soulbound, the idea has been in the gaming typology for, I don't know,
Forever.
20, 30 years. And it's
Yeah.
the prevailing use of assets within gaming, within games, non-transferable assets.
And I don't think like the word soul is I don't think it's too vulnerable to some sort of movement. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think you could probably get by.
I like how you're suggesting that there's like some kind of cult, behind Soulbound tokens.
No, it's like you think of like, oh, it's a soul, and like it's bound to you either solely or it's a bit of a stretch, but bound to your soul, like your person. And then I guess you might have people saying whether or not they believe in people's souls. But I don't see that being too contentious. And the market will decide ultimately. There
the
might be
market will decide. We love that about the market.
Yeah. That's really cool. Tell us about how you got involved, I guess, like with the different groups that you work with. So some of the research, the the blockchain and governance initiative, how you connected, how you all make it work, and maybe also it'd be cool to know how that's, I guess, funded, because obviously there's a lot of people involved with it. I guess what are the stakeholders there, and I always like to understand that because it helps sort of
Who's
think
behind
about, like if it's all open and transparent, doesn't really matter who's behind it sometimes, but I don't know, it's always cool to know.
Yeah, no, first off, like great questions. And if you're going to hold decentralized based values, then you better live up to it by making yourself open source and your ideas open source and the group you're a part of, or create open source and decentralized. In terms of the groups I'm part of, so Blockchain Governance Initiative Network, so BGIN, it was created by the Japanese government back in, I'm fairly sure it was 2018 or 2020. I'll need to check that for you. But since then, there's no government incentive. The Japanese government has done, when I say this, I mean this quite literally. I have never seen a government in the world that actually has departments that are funding, creating, and innovating in decentralized open source technology that they have no care about benefiting from. They just make and then leave off. It's just something you do not see. And so one of the groups that spun out early on was the BGIN. And from my understanding, the directors are, the directors I do know and part of the SteerCo, and it's quite a small foundation, are from universities of Wyoming, IOHK, Cardo's law firm, Georgetown University, OpenID. It's insane. For instance, one of the co-chairs is Professor Shinichiro Matsuo, who is as I understand as well, the advisor to the Japanese government on cryptography, and is a professor of computer science at Georgetown University, which is an amazing university that works directly, has direct tap into the US government because of it's localized in Washington, DC.
That's fantastic. That's exciting. Why do you think the Japanese government's so strong on it's kind of like public goods, right? They're happy to provide support for these initiatives. I guess, is it do you think it comes from the view of like in a long enough time frame or in a big enough cycle, it comes back around and it's like an intuitive play? Is it so they can capture the benefits of like fostering an ecosystem like that in their market?
They're good questions. The answer is I don't know. I'm not the Japanese government, but what I can tell you is I don't know any other government around the world who is spending as much time trying to create such great public goods that I'm benefiting from on the other side of the world. The fact that I've been able to enter into this and I've been able to contribute, there was only 2 co-authors to this paper, 19 contributors, and this foundation was started years ago. One of the earliest contributors actually was the new CEO of Kraken. His name is passing me, but he was the COO. He was one of the founding members of Begin as well. Has taps into the Radical Exchange group, which is about decentralized internet. But in terms of the future and the purpose from the Japanese government, I'm not too sure beyond the fact that it's an amazing piece, amazing foundation with some extremely hard people to get in contact. Always I can have access to. So it's been great.
That's awesome. What's the radical exchange movement?
So Radical Exchange, oh gosh, probably
Let's
Mitch
go.
Mitch was the best one to answer this one, but Radical Exchange, I can say in two regards, is first, extremely grateful they exist because they are creating a foundation that's pushing for a decentralized based internet. Eric Landwale, one of the original authors of the DSOC paper, is, as I understand, one of the founders or directors, but part of the executive committee, as far as I understand. And they host on conferences, which is where conferences set panels, presentations, speeches. It's unconferenced, meaning that everyone comes together, there's different time slots, and then people can start their own presentation, discussion on the spot. And that's actually how we came across Begin. My co-author, Michi Kakabayashi from UC Berkeley, she was actually looking for authors of the SBT paper that was being written. We reconnected about a month or so after the unconference back in last year. And from there, I tapped straight into working the paper and published 24,000 words later.
That's amazing.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's crazy that it was, baking for such a time. Like the depth must be worth a read. I've got it. Just got to get around to it.
I'm actually creating a new paper right now. I was hoping to submit to another conference last week, but we have a lot of client activities ongoing right now, so I've had to delay it. But it is a showcase of exactly that 104 pages within about 8 pages or so. So nice. When that's ready, I'll be flicking that your way to give you the blurb.
No, don't do that. I'll do it. I just haven't got it yet. And the best stuff's always in the weeds.
You'll find a lot of things to heckle me about. Trust me. Okay, I'm happy it's so long. People haven't gone through it yet to find that one word that I misspelled or a grammatical mistake or whatever else, because I get heckled less. People are like, nice paper, awesome.
Yeah. That's funny. I guess maybe because obviously you work with Mitch, we'll have to get him on for a chat as well. I think. I know that the SoulSync community, what was immediately apparent to me is that there wasn't some sort of it was designed to be like, let's just get people that are interested in this topic and grow that and talk about stuff. But I think that you and Mitch obviously did start it, and so I'm keen to hear from him as well. Maybe in his absence, you could give us a bit of color on how you two met, or sort of what the overlap there is. Yeah.
It's actually a pretty funny story. So I hope I can speak for Mitch. Mitch and I know each other pretty well. Definitely call my best friend. So back in 2021, I started at a company called Frankie One, which is the biggest regulation technology provider out of Australia. Does about 80% of Australia's eKYC checks and about nearly 100% of New Zealand's. I was the global go-to-market lead for the crypto vertical. And so in that process, I was working with many of the top 10 global exchanges. And also I had many Australian exchanges here. So I wanted to close every single Australian exchange, get them all connected into one network. And wouldn't you know that Oz Merchant, his old business, was one of those. And I tried to contact him and obviously have a chat. Funnily enough, he said to me, let's go for dinner because you probably won't win this, purely because I actually built the identity solution that we're already using at a company he was at prior called Braun ID.
Right.
And so obviously I wasn't gonna win that, but maybe I could find a friend. And we went for dinner, we had a great time, riffed on a lot of really big ideas around public goods, tragedy of the commons, how to avoid that, how do we incentivize and with using reputation economics, all the kind of stuff you usually talk about at dinner.
Yeah.
And so from there, we connected, had a great time. And then when I left Frankie One to go some own kind of private consultancy, I went to Europe for 2 months, speaking in Stockholm, Monaco, London, Paris, a few other places. And when I came back, he was in the same boat. Just left his business, wrapped up with Oz Merchant. Now he's looking for his own pieces, doing a bit of advisory here and there. It was a really natural next step. And then we did that conference, was our first piece. We actually mentioned Soulbis openly, I think, funny enough. And since then, we've grown to build Soulbis into this business that's worked on, the RBA, CBDC pilot programs, like protocol of mechanisms, fraud investigation, loss of Soulbound token pieces, and published this, 104, this mega paper alongside with Begin. And now Mitchell is actually a co-chair of our IAM key management and privacy working group with Nat Sakamura, who's one of the fathers of digital identity and the chairman of OpenID, which most of the internet, from my understand, runs off of in terms of authentication.
Okay. I think I want to ask you what that means, but maybe we'll have
Sure.
to chat with him as well. I would like to hear, I guess, where you think or what your plans are as one of X or N amount of people in the SoulSync community. I think like everyone can have a crack at shaping it, but where do you think it goes to from here?
I think if I had direct plans, it'd probably be a bit. I think I'd be setting myself up to fail already. I think by having no plans and just creating the right environment, and then letting people like yourself, come up with community projects. Someone says, "Oh, look, art. Well, great, we made a whole new topic on that." You said interviews. We're now doing interviews.
Yep.
I don't want to arbitrate anything. If there's ever a time that I do, I think the community should know about it and we should discuss it. In early stage organizations of any kind, centralization is always a good idea. It truly is. But it should be purely because the infrastructure needed to make a decentralized based ecosystem is extremely difficult, because then you have this, your tolerance to bad actors is generally very, very low. So by having greater tolerance, you generally need better infrastructure. And that's why we have, blockchain and blockchain-based governance and smart contract-based governance and governance tokens. So the plan is, I guess, if I were going to say like a high level where I would love it to be, I'm not going to arbitrate this, but what I would love it to be is to be a decentralized based community that shares innovation and research, that pushes Soulbound tokens and Soul related technology forward. It is one thing I guess I don't want it to be. I'd rather it doesn't. If the community decides this is the direction, that's the direction. But one way I don't want it to be is this show platform where people go on and they just try to convince people of their ideas, as opposed to just talking about what something is so cool, it's so interesting. Talk about your venture, talk about innovation, but don't try to sell me something to buy tokens. I don't want to hear about that. I want to hear about why you're excited about Soulbound tokens and implementing it. There's so many other communities to chill on. Let this community, I believe personally, be about innovation and just kind of collaborating together. Tainting that, it just ruins it for yourself or the individual that's looking to do it, because there won't be a community after a while. All these people are trusted people that Mitch and I know personally.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like there's a fine line. It can be a fine line between, hey, like, tell us about the company that you work at, when that company in the context is involved in the topic. And I think the only way past that is to really focus on discussing like the use cases, the challenges, what's being explored, and avoiding anything that's like, this is why we're number one, this is like how you sign up and all of that. Because I think it's probably one of the challenges that will be key to navigate for anyone in the community is this: as soon as we get a skew where like everyone's moving towards one thing, it kind of loses the outside of that one thing being the diverse range of things of Soulbound. It'll start to lose the sort of strength, because you're just going to be contributing to like a specific someone else's project, where I think what we want to try and, how I see it, I guess, as a random person in that community now.
People should connect with other people. Like, I don't think people understand the kind of people we already have within this community. One of the people is VK, who's the director of technology of Consensus. The ex-head of identity of the Russian central bank is in there as well. You have Mitchell's obviously co-chair with Nat Sakamura, who's the chairman of OpenID. You have doctors, professors, you have computer scientists, cryptographers, right? You have CEOs and founders. You have the GM of APAC and Middle East of Crypto.com in here. Like the people they're not just enthusiasts. These are people who live, love, and breathe what is blockchain. And now it's just a slice of Soulbound tokens. So I challenge everybody who's part of this community to connect with each other. Like, have a meet, like 15 minutes. That's absolutely okay. Maybe we'll do an AMA. Maybe we'll do a Google Space. Who knows? But what is really important is you don't pass up opportunities as a community or as an individual with all these unique entities and new people doing crazy things that are actually changing the world. Like, don't shill. It's like shilling ruins that.
Yeah, it's
Just
the one thing.
Just try not to shill. Like, if it goes that direction, it goes that direction, and that's how it is. Like, communities go in life cycles. If it dies within a day, it dies within a day.
Yeah.
I will want to continue to bring together people. So then I'll start another thing. But the main point is people should understand quality people that are listening in that room are really great. Don't pass it up. Be accurate with your language. Be open to being wrong, and as well, like, want the best for each other. And if you do want to invite people, like let me know. Like, let's bring them in. But don't just invite to grow the community to 1 million members. It's not about that. Like, quality over quantity. It's just, it goes a long way with this.
Yeah, I think that's another tricky challenge, is how to I guess protect the community values. You don't want it to be restrictive. You also don't want it to get diluted.
If it dies, it dies though. This community started like nearly 2 weeks ago. We have 100 members already. We already have 400 messages in there, and we have our first few community projects. It's going pretty well, but if it died tomorrow, like, okay, great. We learned from that. Next thing, let's go.
SoulSync 2.
So SoulSync, the sequel.
Yeah. I love it.
The Substack too is pretty important.
Yeah, great. All right, well, we'll probably wrap it up there, at least for now. And if you're watching, don't shill, and drop your comments wherever we put the video, jump in and do what I did and just figure out a way to add value, because I don't know a huge amount about Soulbound tokens, but I can do some interviews. So that's my little angle for now. But I feel like I'm getting up to speed pretty quick.
Yeah, I think the people in that conversation, you'll learn everything you need to. And not to show my paper again, nothing from that paper. Okay, we'll go read the paper. There's a pretty cool piece in there.
I'll read it. I don't think that's shilling. It's
oh, that's a shill.
Like it's a good shill.
Tokens.
Yeah, there's no tokens. Just maybe that makes it. Yeah. Okay.
Non-transferable shills.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Lovely chat. I look forward to seeing where this goes.
Likewise.
Take care.
You too.
See ya.